Hello and welcome. We are Green Gen, SCB's asset management team, and today we'll be proposing our strategy to manage part of the University Endowment Fund. We recognise Canadian University's commitment to transition to a net zero greenhouse gas portfolio within the next 10 years, and we commend your ambition to surpass the commonly anticipated 2050 target. Our team is comprised of Alana Hoops, Angelica Chow, Elise Muir, Lara Brooks, and Ji Shao. We each have a demonstrated background in sustainable finance, and we're confident we can help manage your fund successfully. So firstly, we'll take you to the background of the net zero approach. Then we'll look at net zero targets and strategy, followed by the current portfolio assessment. Then we'll go through the proposed portfolio strategy. And finally, we'll look at the forecast and monitoring of the proposed portfolio. In order to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius and prevent further sea level rise, heat waves, droughts, and many other climate-related disasters, the IPCC 2021 Climate Change Report highlights that we need to reach net zero carbon dioxide emissions by no later than 2050. By investing in mixed low-carbon assets, we can help Canadian University achieve our net zero objectives and ensure stable returns on investment. We understand that Canadian University are looking for a strategy to achieve a net zero position substantively by 2025, finalised by 2032, as per the NZAOA target setting protocol. This can be achieved through your commitment to net zero greenhouse gas portfolio in line with the IPCC recommendations to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. The fund must endure in perpetuity and thus be oriented towards capital protection with a low risk tolerance, hereby seeking moderate growth, and it needs to have long-term horizons. Now I'll pass you over to my colleague Alana, who will take you through the transition to net zero targets for Canadian University.
Thank you, Lara. This is the goal trajectory of our proposed portfolio based on external science-backed timelines for net zero progress. Along with this are these recommendations from the Science Based Targets initiative, SBTI, on how to get set up for net zero activities. SCD will provide support to our investments and fund managers to ensure the goal that net zero is not abandoned and is achieved. And after initializing SBTI operational targets, we will be recommending our investments include climate-related opportunities and governance activities. Along with these recommendations for monitoring and adjustments, the GHG accounting methods of partnerships for carbon accounting are integral to meeting net zero as they guide financial institutions on how to integrate their progress into annual reports for annual comparison. The tracking metric is emissions per activity unit relevant to the sector combined with the percentage of portfolio outstanding value in the specific asset or class or sector. These methods enable financial institutions to calculate the absolute emissions per asset class at a specific point in time. The absolute emissions is then converted to emissions intensity using the physical activity data that are linked to the loans and investments. These specific measurements allow for accurate tracking towards the net zero goal. And this is the performance of our current portfolio. The current portfolio has a real return of 4.67%, which is currently meeting the required return by CU. The volatility is represented by the standard deviation of the return percent, which indicates how precise the cluster of returns was. The total volatility using this measure is quite small. Therefore, the returns for the current portfolio were fairly stable over the last 5 years. As for the GHG performance, there is no emission data for the FTSE Canada Universe bond. But the organization has stated that the bond does not manage with any temperature scenario and does not attain the objectives of the Paris Agreement. Therefore, it is not likely that this index will meet the net zero by 2032 objective of CU. S&P, TSX 60, and Dow Jones Global Indices both monitor a few carbon indicators. Most telling for our portfolio are the carbon to value invested and fossil fuel reserves. The carbon to value invested graph, C, shows us the metric tons of CO2 equivalent emitted for the 60% of the 1 billion invested in these two funds. The fossil fuel reserve graphs, D, show us the carbon emitted if the asset of these funds were to burn all their fossil fuel reserves at once. This is also shown as total metric tons CO2 equivalent for 60% of the 1 billion invested. For reference, 1 million metric tons of CO2 equivalent is emitted in a round trip flight from Toronto, Canada to Paris, France. Next, I will pass along to Angelica, who will describe our proposed portfolio approach.
Thank you, Alana. So for our proposed portfolio, we aim to diversify CU's portfolio by using the total portfolio approach, which includes having a clear understanding of the portfolio's objectives of achieving net zero by 2032 with a stable return and low risk. With this approach, we will be agile with the investments by not sticking to a rigid portfolio and moving to one of asset mix. We will also keep a commitment to staying at the forefront of sustainable innovation and market trends to ensure the health of the fund while supporting the health of our planet. Under this balanced, conservative, and growth portfolio, we will allocate 60% of the total assets under management to equities, 35% to fixed income, and 5% to cash. The proposed portfolio has a forecasted annualized return of 11.15%. Next, we will discuss each asset class in further detail, starting with equities first, which we will highlight index funds and individual stocks. For index funds, our strategy is to focus on a diversified portfolio of funds that emphasize low carbon emissions or the reduction of greenhouse gas GHG emissions. We analyze 5 potential funds that are predicted to become net zero by 2032. This first fund is the S&P 500, which includes the top 500 companies that do not own fossil fuel reserves, such as crude oil, natural gas, and thermal coal. Fossil fuels are a main source of GHG emissions, so investing in fossil fuel free helps CU with ensuring a reduction of GHG emissions within the portfolio. Other funds focus on the reduction of GHG emissions through clean technology, such as the iShares ETF, which includes companies that produce energy from solar, wind, and other renewable clean sources, and the Bloomberg EV Index, which includes energy storage technologies, hydrogen fuel cells, and electrical vehicles. The MSCI index is important as it's aligned with the Paris Agreement 1.5 degrees Celsius strategy, with targets on reducing carbon intensity by at least 50% by 2050 and a self-decarbonization rate of at least 10% each year. Lastly, the iShares MSCI ETF is composed of large and mid-developed and emerging markets that are focused on low carbon exposure and reducing carbon footprint. We want to note that we analyze available information on weighted average carbon intensity to understand the carbon intensity of each fund. This is a value recommended by TCFD and can be used to help align CU's portfolio with the reduction in carbon exposure. Not all the values are readily available, so we plan to work closely with these funds asset managers to calculate WACI and analyze reduction trends towards 2032. All in all, this combination of low emissions, Paris Agreement aligned, and reduction of emissions index funds will generate a forecasted return of 10.5% for equities. And next, my colleague Elise will delve into individual stocks.
Thank you, Angelica. Currently, we are solely focused on index funds to keep the proposed portfolio's risk low while venturing into net zero focused investments. However, individual companies whose management are focused on achieving net zero in their operations will be monitored for future interest. An example of this includes Maple Leaf Foods, the sustainable protein company. In their recent 2020 sustainability report, the company stated their aim to reduce their GHG emissions by 50% and their scope 1 and 2 emissions by 30% by 2025. Through an analysis of the reported data, they are on progress to meet their deliverables. As demonstrated in Table A, they reported a 19.5% reduction in natural gas, and in Table B, a 2.67% reduction in Scope 1 emissions. The company attributes this success to scalable decarbonization solutions such as anaerobic digestion and renewable biogas operations. Additionally, investment in the emerging field of regenerative agriculture, such as carbon sequestration initiatives. As a result, Maple Leaf Foods is a notable company to monitor in the future as they are aligned with our proposed portfolio objectives. When evaluating these potential individual stocks within our portfolio, it is imperative that we investigate if their emission reduction strategy includes purchasing carbon offsets. Briefly, offsets are tradable credits such as land-based reforestation purchased to balance a buyer's GHG emissions. Notably, purchases have exponentially increased by 700% since 2019. However, this increase in purchasing leads to the offsets fallacy, which is it's not scalable. For example, the company Shell would require 28.6 million hectares of reforested land to achieve their net zero target by 2050. For reference, this is roughly the size of Italy. Unfortunately, the scalability issue demonstrates that it is vital to thoroughly examine each solution proposed by a future potential individual stock option to reach net zero. Lastly, regarding index funds and future potential individual stocks is standardization. In October 2021, the Canadian Securities Administrators recognized the lack of standardized reporting for climate-related disclosures such as GHG emissions. But this is imperative for investors to ensure credible, comparable data across companies. As a result, the International Financial Reporting Standards Foundation has created the International Sustainability Standards Board, who are developing a global baseline of disclosure standards. As a result, we aim to stay informed and utilize these standards for monitoring purposes of selected equities. Now, she will take us through the asset class fixed income.
Thank you, Elise. We propose two investments under fixed income, bonds and MBS. The Sustainability Bond Fund is a fund of funds which accounts for 17.5% of the total AUM. This amount is investing in at least 3 sustainability-related bonds. Investing in sustainability-related bonds provides a means for CU to help issuers fund projects that put the world on a long-term path towards a zero-carbon economy. They also provide a means to hedge against climate change risks in the portfolio while achieving a similar, if not better, returns on the investments. Please refer to the return on 10,000 graphs. More importantly, these bonds generate an annualized return of 4.325%. They are also predicted to achieve net zero by 2030. Our last investment is green mortgage-backed securities, which accounts for 17.5% of total AUM. Canada's proposed 2020 national model code is that all new buildings will be built to net zero energy ready standards by 2030. This provides us with a perfect timing to issue green MBS. Green MBS provides members of the university with a lower interest rate than the market benchmark if they purchase net zero or energy efficient homes. Green MBS provides affordable housing to the community while indirectly investing in net zero properties. This allows CU to make a social and climate impact. As you can see from the virtuous cycle, at the end of the cycle is the financial returns to the fund. The first part of the return is a stable annual interest of 2.9%. The second part of the return comes from donations made by university members who benefit from green MBS and who would like to give back to the endowment fund in the future. Thus, investing in this fixed income is aligned with CU's objective of achieving net zero by 2032 while making a stable return. Next, Lana will delve into our forecasted performance for the total AUM.
Thank you, Xi. As mentioned, the current portfolio has a nominal return of 6.47% compared to the nominal return of 11.15% of our proposed portfolio. Our portfolio also has lower risk due to our strategic diversification. Our 10-year projection shows a competitive return that obtains the required return over the forecasted CPI. Along with meeting the return requirement and lowering risk, SCD is offering a competitive management fee of 0.8% of total AUM. Next, I'll pass along to Lara to review the monitoring of net progress.
Thank you, Alana. Now I'll take us through the ways in which we can monitor progress of the portfolio as we help you work towards net zero. Here you can see the various principles for responsible investment that we work in accordance with. In essence, we'll actively incorporate ESG issues into our investment analysis, engage with external asset managers, and develop our own reporting for disclosing activities and progress towards the principles. A net zero strategy is part of a larger set of overarching goals known as the UN Sustainable Development Goals. These contribute towards a global effort towards preserving the future of planet Earth for generations to come. As such, our strategy targets several SDGs, as you can see above. Thank you very much for watching our presentation, and we hope to speak with you soon.